Greetings and welcome back. This is Dr. C. And in this section, this snippet, I know many of you are thinking about entrepreneurship, thinking about starting companies, and this is the time to do it with AI, generative AI, all these capabilities out there floating around. There are many ideas, huge opportunity right now. So I thought I would share with you one of my favorite Lex Fridman podcasts. This is with Mark Cuban, entrepreneur, network programmer from the late 90s, from Dallas, Texas, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, sold the Dallas Mavericks to a bunch of characters that got Luka Doncic out of Dallas over to Los Angeles. I'm half Croatian, Serbian roots, so I appreciate that whole zone. But so let me turn things over to Lex Fridman, and there's some words of wisdom to be gathered from Mark Cuban, who's been through many rolls of the dice and has come out pretty well. So here we go.
The person who controls the algorithm controls the world, right? And if you are committed to one specific platform as your singular source of information or affiliated platforms, then whoever controls the algorithm or the programming there controls you.
The following is a conversation with Mark Cuban, a multi-billionaire businessman, investor and star of the series Shark Tank, longtime principal owner of the Dallas Mavericks. This is the Lex Fridman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Mark Cuban. You've started many businesses, invested in many businesses, heard a lot of pitches privately and on Shark Tank. So you're the perfect person to ask, what makes a great entrepreneur?
Somebody who's curious. They want to keep on learning because business is ever changing. It's never static. Somebody who's agile, because as you learn new things and the environment around you changes, you have to be able to adapt and make the changes. And somebody who can sell, because no business has ever survived without sales. And as an entrepreneur who's creating a company, whatever your product or service is, if that's not the most important thing and you're just dying and excited to tell people about it, then you're not going to succeed.
But it's also a skill thing. How do you sell? What do you mean by selling?
Selling is just helping. I've always looked at it about putting myself in the shoes of another person and asking a simple question. Can I help this person? Can my product help them? From the time I was 12 years old, selling garbage bags door to door and just asking a simple question. Do you use garbage bags? Do you need garbage bags? Well, let me save you some time. I'll bring them to your house and drop them off. To, streaming. Why do we need streaming when we have TV and radio? Well, you can't get access to your TV and radio everywhere you go. So we kind of break down geographic and physical barriers and, cost plus drugs. What's the product that we actually sell? We sell trust. In a simplistic approach, we buy drugs to sell drugs, but we add transparency to it. And bringing transparency to an industry is a differentiation, and it helps people.
Trust in an industry that's highly lacking in trust.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the trick to selling garbage bags? Let's go back there. 12 years old, is it just your natural charisma? I guess a good question to ask, are you born with it or can you develop it?
Oh, you can definitely develop it. Yeah, because selling garbage bags door to door was easy, right? Because 12-year-old Mark going, hi, my name is Mark. Do you use garbage bags? You know what the answer is going to be, right? Can I just drop them off for you, once a week whenever you need them? You just call and I'll bring them down? Sure. So that was easy.
But I'm sure you've been rejected.
Oh, yeah, of course. Not everybody says yes.
What was your percentage?
I don't remember, but it's pretty close to 100%.
Oh, okay. Never. So that's why you don't remember.
Yeah, right. Because who's going to say no to a 12-year-old kid who's going to save him time and money? But, typically in my career where I've started companies, it's to do something that other people aren't doing, whether it was connecting PCs and to local area networks and at Micro Solutions. And, the salesmanship was walking into a company and just saying, look, talk to me and I can help you improve your productivity and your profitability. Is that important to you? And the answer is obviously always yes. And then the question is, can I do the job and can I do it cost effectively? And so you didn't have to be a born salesperson to be able to ask those questions, but you have to be able to be willing to put in the time to learn that business.
And
That's the hardest part.
I'm sure there's a skill thing to it too, in like how you solve the puzzle of communicating with a person and convincing them.
Yeah, I mean, there's skill from the perspective that I read like a maniac. Then, like now, you can give me an example of any type of business, and it'll take me 2 seconds to figure out how they make money and how I can make it more productive. And I think that's probably my biggest skill, being able to just drill down to what the actual need is, if any, and then from there, being able to say, well, if this is what this company does and this is what their goal is, how can I introduce something new that they haven't seen before? And is that a business that I can create and make money from?
So figure out how this kind of business makes money in the present, and then figure out, is there a way to make more money in the future by introducing a totally new kind of thing?
Correct.
And you can just do that with anything.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you think you're born with that?
No, I worked at it because, going back to what I said earlier about curiosity, you have to be insanely curious because the world is always changing. My dad used to say, we don't live in the world we were born into, which is absolutely true. If you're not a voracious consumer of information, then you're not going to be able to keep up. And no matter what your sales skills or ability are, they're going to be useless.
What'd you learn about life from your dad? You mentioned your dad.
My dad did upholstery on cars, got up, went to work every morning at 7 o'clock, came back 5 or 6, 7 o'clock, exhausted. And I learned to be nice. I learned to be caring. I learned to be accepting. Just, qualities that I think he really tried to pass on to myself and my 2 younger brothers were just be a good human, and I think, he didn't have business experience. So as I got into business, he would just, say, sorry, Mark, I can't help you. I don't understand what you're doing. Neither one of my parents had gone to college. You've got to figure it out for yourself. But he was also very insistent that he worked at a company called Regency Products where they did upholstery on cars. And he would bring me there to sweep the floors, not because he wanted me to learn that business, because he wanted me to learn how backbreaking that work was. I mean, he lost an eye in an accident at work. A staple broke. And the only thing he wanted from my brothers and I was for us to never have to work like that, to go to college, to figure it out.
You said to be nice. That said, you also said that when you were first starting a business, you were a bit more of an asshole than you wish you would have been.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because I was more of a yeller. I was, I didn't have...
Really? Mark
Yeah.
Cuban?
What you see on the sidelines, with me at a Mavs game, maybe a little bit, but I also didn't have any patience for somebody I thought wasn't using my kind of common sense, right? Because I was always on the go, 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 particularly when I was younger, just trying to be successful, trying to get to the point where I had independence. And I would tell this to people, either you're speeding up and getting on the train, or, we'll stop and drop you off at the next station, but let's go where you go.
Did you have trouble with the hire fast, fire fast part of running a business?
Yeah, always, because I hated firing people, because it meant, one, it was an admission of a mistake in the hiring, and two, the salesperson in me always wanted to come out ahead, and I was always horrible at firing. But I always partnered with people who had no problem with it, so I always delegated that.
Well, that's the tricky thing. When you're working with somebody and they're not quite there, and you have to decide, are they going to step up and grow into the person that's the right, or they're not? Mm-hmm. And in that gray area is probably where you have to fire.
It was hard, yeah, for sure, because there is obviously a failure somewhere in the process. What did we do wrong? And when I would interview people for jobs, I think 99% of the people I've ever interviewed, I've wanted to hire, because in my mind, it was like, okay, I can figure out how to make this person work, right? And then they wouldn't. And then, people at the company would be like, Mark, you suck at this, And so I always delegated the hiring.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I see the potential in people. I see the beauty in people, and which is a great way to live life. But when you're running a company, it's a different thing.
It's different. And you got to know what you're good at and what you're bad at, right? Yeah. I was good at, I was a ready, fire, aim guy, and I always partnered with people who were very anal and perfectionists, because where I could just go, 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 they would keep me inside the baselines.
They would do the due diligence.
Or just, the detail work, to dot the I's and to cross the T's.
What does it take to take that first leap into starting a business?
That's the hardest part. It really depends on your personal circumstances. Like I got fired. I was sleeping on the floor, 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment. So I
Nice.
couldn't go any lower. So there was no
Started at the
downside.
bottom.
Yeah, there was no downside for me starting a business. And it was just like, I was 25 when we started Micro Solutions. And, I just gotten fired and it was like, look, I'm a lousy employee. I'm going to just start going to some of my prospects that I had at my job and ask them to front the money that I needed to install some software, and found this company, Architectural Lighting, who put up $500 for me. That allowed me to buy software and have 50% margins. And, that's how I started my company.
But like by way of advice, would you say? I mean, it's a terrifying thing.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be in a position where you're confident. I get emails and approached by people all the time. What kind of business should I start? That tells me you're not ready to start a business, right? Either you're prepared and you know it or you don't. In the United States, with the American dream, everybody kind of always looks at themselves and say, okay, I have this idea, right? And then you go through this process of saying, okay, you talk to your friends or family, what do you think? And then almost always say, oh, it's a great idea, right? Then you go on Google and you say, oh my God, no one else is doing it, without thinking, 10 companies have gone out of business trying the same thing. But
Yeah.
okay, it's on Google. And then people stop, right? Because that next step means, okay, I have to change what I'm doing in my life. And that's not easy for 99% of the people. Some people look at that as an opportunity and get excited about it. Some people get terrified because it's, okay, maybe I'm comfortable, maybe I have responsibilities. And so whatever your circumstances are, if you want to take that next step, you have to be able to deal with the consequences of changing your circumstances. And that's the first thing. Do you save money? So you have, if you have a job, do you have a mortgage? Do you have a family? You got to save money. You can't just walk. I mean, they've got to eat and they've got to have shelter. But on the other side of the coin, if you've got nothing, it's the perfect time to start a business.
Yeah, desperation is a good catalyst
Yep.
for starting a business. But in many cases, the decision, as you're talking about, you're going to have to make is to leave a job that's providing some degree of comfort already. So, and I suppose when you're sleeping on the floor and there's 6 guys, it's a little bit easier.
It's really easy, right? Particularly when you get fired and you don't have a job, and you're looking at bartending at night to try to pay the bills. And so it wasn't hard for me, but to your point, it really comes down to preparation. If it's important enough to you, you'll save the money. You'll give up, whatever it is you need to give up to put the money aside. If you have obligations, you'll put in the work to learn as much as you can about that industry so that when you start your business, you're prepared. And you can always, at night, on weekends, whenever you find time, lunch, start making the calls to find out if people will write you a check, or transfer you the money to buy whatever it is you're selling. And by doing those things, you can put yourself in a position to succeed. It's where people just think, okay, Geronimo, I'm leaping off the edge of a cliff and I'm starting a business. That's tough.
But sometimes that's like the way you do it, though.
There's always examples of any situation or scenario, right? But I mean,
Anecdotal evidence for everything.
yeah, but if you're going into a new business, you're going to have competition unless you're really, 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 really lucky.
Yeah.
And that competition is not going to just say, okay, let Lex or Mark just kick our ass.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be prepared on how you're going to deal with that competition.
What do you think that is about America that has so many people who have that dream and act on that dream of starting a business?
I think we've just got a culture of consumption and more, and to get more, you've got to, creating a business gives you the greatest potential upside and the greatest leverage on your time. But it also creates the most risk.
So that capitalist machine, there's a lot of elements. By contrast, the respect for the law, like an entrepreneur can trust that if they pull it off, the law will protect them. There won't be a government.
Hopefully that's still the case. Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's always
us
there's always
versus other countries.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So us versus other countries, like Joe Biden of all people said to me, it was at an entrepreneurship conference that when he was vice president, he had put together. And we had gone up there, from a bunch of us from Shark Tank, to talk to young entrepreneurs from around the world. And he said to me, Mark, the one thing that separates, I've been to every country around the world, and the one thing that separates us is entrepreneurship. We're the most entrepreneurial country in the world, and there's no one else who's even close. And when you look at the origin of our biggest, the biggest companies in the world, for the most part, there's an American origin story somewhere behind there. And I think, that just gets perpetuated on itself. We see those Horatio Alger stories. We see examples of the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Steve Jobs of the world. And those are the types of people we want to copy.
Yeah, we want to be really careful and try to really figure out what that is because we don't want to lose that.
So I hope you got something out of the Lex Fridman and Mark Cuban interaction. I think one of the interesting takeaways, sort of a quotable phrase, I think, from Mark Cuban, desperation is a good catalyst. Yes, but I think it's beyond just desperation. I think it's often frustration with whatever your situation is. And if you're going to make the move into this other space, which is going to change your life, I think it's important to have good people around so it's an enjoyable run rather than a fight and a struggle. So good luck, and I'd be interested to hear your takes, your feedback, and your ideas about how you're progressing in the future on your path to success.